Good morning, everybody. So, human free will comes up often, and I think it's important to touch on it every so often because I believe it is the greatest lie in religion and Christianity. The belief that human beings, the creation, can act completely independent of their creator. And when we talk about human free will, I think it's important to define first what that is. It's not a choice. We all make choices. Of course we do. We make thousands of choices a day, ranging from big decisions to small decisions. And we make them. However, there are causes and influences behind those decisions, and we bow down to the greatest influence in our life. Even if we reject one influence that is strong, that just means we succumb to another influence that somehow became stronger than that influence. And we don't always feel these forces acting upon us, but they are causing us and putting us in a box to make choices that is all controlled. The circumstances and how we react to those certain decisions to produce those choices are all created by God. Therefore, they are not free, even though we make the choices and seemingly make them of our own volition. But that's simply not true. Free will is acting without influence. It's the ability to act apart from any influence and separate from those circumstances that we're in to make a free choice, to produce something of ourselves that is independent of God. So if we look at Acts chapter 17, verse 25 and 26, Paul says, "Neither is he," talking about God, "is he attended by human hands, as if requiring anything, since he himself gives to all life and breath and all." So here we have Paul introducing God here and saying that he gives to all life, breath, and all. In Romans 11:36, Paul says that we cannot give anything to God that he has not first given to us. And if we look at Acts 17:28, "For in him we are living and moving and are." So everything we are has to do with God. Our very creation, our sustainment within that creation, and our future. So these scriptures are saying at no point can you step outside or step away from God and act separately from God. Human free will says that we do exactly that, that we separate from God and give him something that surprises him, that he can't control, that is apart from him, that we create and give to him that he did not first give to us. So we become our own gods and can act outside of the very existence of God. That's human free will. Google definition defines free will as this: the power of acting without the constraint or necessity of fate, without the constraint of necessity or fate, the ability to act at one's own discretion. So the power of acting without the constraint. It is impossible for us to operate without constraint when we're making a choice. So if you look at this, if an outside source has any influence in forming or creating the stage for a choice, then that choice cannot be free. For example, if I have a choice between, if I have cancer, a choice between using chemotherapy or using natural remedies. And let's say I chose natural remedies to fight my cancer. Is that a free will choice? Hell no, it's not a free will choice. If it was a free will choice, I would have chosen not to have cancer in the first place. So the cancer has constrained my decision, and then I make that decision based on circumstances in my inmost being that God created, and I make that decision. But it's constrained immediately by the fact that I have cancer. So it cannot be free. That's the very opposite of the definition of free will. All right, so you look at the operation of death. We all inherited death from Adam. So we have death operating in us. The minute we're born, we begin crying. We need comfort. We need food. We need clothing. We need all this stuff the minute we're born because we're born into death. If you have a free will choice, then I would choose to be born a 25-year-old man who's strong and good looking and perfect in every way and start life from there. But we don't start life from there. No one set up all the circumstances and how they would enter this world. We're entered at the discretion of God. So we're born a certain way that causes us to need certain things and act certain ways. We have no control over those circumstances. God does. So here we have death operating in us. That affects everything we do. Who chose by their free will to have death operating in them? No one did. But if we had a free will, we would have had to set up all the circumstances that causes any decision or set up for a decision down the road. Death affects everything. If I couldn't die, then, that would change every decision. I wouldn't even look both ways when I cross the street. I'd probably go skydiving, jump off cliffs a little bit more. That changes my whole decision-making paradigm. And if it does, then guess what? Your decisions aren't free because the circumstances are dictating and changing your decisions in a certain way. How about Adam and Eve? You look at Adam and Eve, people say, oh yeah, they made a free will choice to, eat of the tree that was forbidden. Well, who created the tree? The tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Who created that situation? Well, God did. And look at deception. You look at Adam and Eve. Did they even know what deception was? You look at Satan, disguising himself and convincing Eve, and Eve convincing Adam, or Adam, for wanting to stay with Eve, partook of what Eve did. They were deceived. They didn't even know what deception was. So a being coming and saying, oh no, that's not what God meant. God meant this or that. Would they have even known what deception was? And you want to say that they have a free will? A coerced will, a deceived will, cannot be a free will because it's being influenced by that deception or that coercion. And it's the same on the negative aspect as it is on the positive aspect. If God is working in you to will and to do of his good pleasure, you're getting influenced by that. So the influence completely negates the possibility of what you're doing to be free. Free willers, or people that believe in free will, they want to deny all the forces that constrain their choice or put it in the box. Then they claim to make a free will choice within that constraint. And that's just impossible. You know, one of the examples I give is the bald guy and the fly, and I'm going to do it in the first person since I happen to be bald. But if I raise my hand and say, it is my will, I'm going to keep my hand up no matter what. I don't care what people say, it is my will, and I'm going to hold my hand up. Nothing you can say or do is going to cause me to put my hand down. And then as I say that, a fly lands on my head, and I do this to swat at it. So I bring my hand down based on a circumstance that occurred. So the moral of the story is to have a free will, you have to control every circumstance that leads up to that free will. Because if any circumstances causes you or puts a constraint on you to make a certain decision, then that decision cannot come from your free will because it's been constrained, it's been coerced, it's been influenced. And my question to anyone who believes in free will is, what decision have you made ever in your life that hasn't been constrained in some way? Every decision has a constraint. The decision itself is a constraint. If you have to choose between A and B, that's a constraint. That's a decision you have to make. It's like the cancer example. Yeah, you can make a decision on what treatment to have, but that's not your free will choice. That's a choice that was coerced by the fact that you have cancer. That's the detail. That's the circumstance that caused you to make that decision. And you could trace every decision that you ever make to circumstances that put you in that situation. The person you marry. Okay, like when I married my wife, there's a lot of circumstances that went into that. I would have never met her if she didn't work with me at the school that I was at. If she lived in Yugoslavia, the old Yugoslavia, or, Afghanistan, I would have never have met her. So I wouldn't have had that choice to marry her. If she was never born, if I was gay, that choice would have never presented itself. So all these circumstances had to come together for the choice to present itself. Should I marry her or not? So when I say yes, that's a free will decision. Well, no, it's not, because I didn't control every circumstances putting me in a situation where that decision was even possible. So people want to make choices and then divorce themselves from all the circumstances that made that decision even possible, and therefore constrains them, therefore makes it impossible for it to be a free will decision. And then you got to attribute, where do these circumstances come from? Where does your reaction to these circumstances, which were also formed ultimately by your circumstances and the inmost being that was created for you? Who is in control of that? Well, it's God. So God is influencing everything, even though we don't feel it. And if you divorce those circumstances from those decisions, then you're divorcing any control at all that God has. And then I question whether you even believe in God at all. If you can make everything happen for you independently of God, then what makes you different than an atheist? Because even people who believe in the Big Bang Theory and evolution, they believe in a cause, they just don't believe that cause is God. So if you claim to be a Christian, you're denying the cause of things. That means you're denying God. So at what point do you give God any credit for the circumstances or the constraints that drive you to make a decision? If you give God credit at any point, then you cannot have a free will. If you don't give God any credit at any point for those circumstances, then you don't believe in God at all. You can't have it both ways. And in my next video, I'm going to go over some scripture and then move on. Thanks for watching.